Clarence Moten. He went to prison for theft. That was 1973. Got out after a couple years. He went back for robbery. Got out after a few years. He goes back for forgery. Clarence might be what I would classify as a career criminal. This is Sharon's dad. When Clarence gets out of prison, Sharon calls him 4 times. He says, Sharon called me. And she told me that day that I'm a terrible daddy and I've never done anything for her. And daddy, damn it, I need you to help me. And when your daughter does that and you have been a terrible father, you'll do anything you need to. And I'm like, all right, Clarence, that makes sense. What did you do? Well,
when somebody hurts your child, your parental instinct,
you go nuts.
It's primitive. It's very primitive.
Sometimes you feel helpless against your own emotions that fill you in response to that.
Well, that is what you need to work against.
Welcome to Socialite Crime Club. The case we're discussing today has been a very memorable one for you throughout your career. Why is that?
I've worked on countless homicide cases. In fact, you and I joke about it now of how many I've forgotten. Mm-hmm. And something will come up, I'm like, I totally forgot this case. And it's a crazy case, and it slips my memory. I think I'm old.
Well, that could be.
Yeah, this one, it's interesting because when you get into all of the twists and turns of this case, it really puts you on the horns of dilemma a little bit. Because on one side, it's this extremely brutal homicide involving domestic violence, which is no laughing matter. It's a serious thing, right? But on the other side, it's just this nonstop comedy of errors. You just keep waiting for it to stop or thinking this can't be real. But I'm here to tell you, we're recounting the facts of this case, and you don't know if you should laugh or cry. And it comes down to, where do you draw the line?
Actually, when we talked about this case a lot, it was, where do we draw the line on this? Is this okay to say? Right. Is this okay to giggle at?
It could almost be its own Broadway musical, and I think it would do really well.
Yeah, like Chicago.
Yeah, if it ever gets taken, they better pay us for it.
So, big announcement. We are doing our first live this coming Sunday, August 25th. We encourage you guys to join us, ask questions. Excited about it because this is the first time we'll be with our socialites live and interacting.
Make sure you're hitting that notification button. That's how you're going to get the notification of the time that it's going to be and all of our future lives as well. This is going to be a really fun one because there's nothing off limits with this case. We can talk about all the behind the scenes action on this one. I've got more pictures. I've got some really juicy stories. We're going to have a good time, and you can get in early asking your questions.
Yeah, if you want to ask a question early, you can go to our community board, and there is a post up where you can put your questions in there for us early if you'd like to. So we have a domestic violence case today.
I'm confused. Is it domestic violence or is it intimate partner? What if my domestic partner is also my intimate partner? It happens.
It's the same, but we use intimate partner violence a bit interchangeably, if you will, because there are a lot of people who are abused by intimate partners. They aren't married. They don't live under the same roof. Intimate partner violence does technically fall under the span of domestic violence.
But if I'm married and we live together, domestic violence is a better tag. Intimate partner would be, we're just hooking up on the side. We don't live in the same
spousal violence
house.
Would be domestic violence. Yeah, okay. Because domestic violence also extends to the children. But intimate partner violence, when we talk about that, we could be talking about teenage adolescents who have a violent relationship. They're being coerced. We're also talking about the children of people who are in some type of intimate relationship that are being affected by intimate partner violence, again, falling under the umbrella of domestic violence.
I feel like we do need a little bit more of a trigger warning. You know this case fairly well. It's going to get pretty brutal at times.
We themed this episode as a whisper crime. And a whisper crime is basically a case that has never received much attention. There was no media on it. There was really no conviction or jury trial process for this case. They were just immediate appeals. And these are also crimes that kind of almost happen just hush-hush. Nobody ever hears about it.
Right.
And it is a gritty, gruesome crime. So we also did add some trigger warnings to this case. Obviously, there's domestic violence. We labeled it as moderate. It's not one of our heavier, worse cases that we've brought to you.
It's brutal, but it's not as dark as most.
Right. And if you're listening to true crime, you probably expect to hear some brutality in some of these incidents. Our ultimate goal is to bring awareness to the issue of domestic violence and do that in a way that's different, that's memorable.
These cases happen every day, and unfortunately, it just buries them into the headlines, right? So let's try to make this one or maybe stays current. So I'm going to start this episode, though, by almost going to the end of the episode. So let me paint a picture for our socialites here. I want you to imagine this one-lane dirt road. It's in the middle of the desert. Nothing around. The nearest town's like 100 miles away.
Okay.
Middle of the night. Quiet. Out of the left frame, you see this black Cadillac. Brand new, nice Cadillac CTS.
Okay.
Bumping up and down the road, big dust cloud behind it, kind of the hue of the taillights lighting up the dust. So as this car enters the center of your frame that you're imagining here, it slides to a stop on this dirt road. A huge cloud of dust envelops the entire car. You still have the red hue of the taillights. Mm-hmm. The next thing you hear is the driver's door opens, and you hear the driver yell to the passenger, "Hurry up, get out." Okay. They both walk to the trunk, pop the trunk. There's a dead body in the trunk. The driver yells at the passenger again, "Come on, help me." Now this body has been in the trunk for a while. It's in full rigor. What that means for our socialites at home, rigor mortis is when the body stiffens up. It can happen about 6 to 8 hours after death. Body's in full rigor, so it's been in the trunk and now it's all curled up. So as the passenger and the driver pull the body out and it kind of just drops to the ground, it stays in this really weird position.
Almost a deformed position.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. So as you continue to imagine this, the driver hands the passenger a saw, like a wood saw.
Okay.
You know what to do. So the passenger gets down and in the process stumbles, falls a little bit, lands on the body, gets up, starts trying to cut this hand off. Can't do it. Gets sick. Like dry heaving.
What?
Vomits.
What? Okay.
Tries again. Gets a couple cuts in. Ugh. Gets sick. Vomits again.
Oh my gosh. What's the driver doing?
The driver's going back to the car and digging an axe out of the trunk. So there the passenger is trying to cut the hand off. Next thing that happens, the driver kicks the passenger out of the way. "Get out of the way, pussy." Swings this axe, this perfect clean, hits the wrist right at where the wrist and the hand connect. Severs the hand right off, picks up the hand, throws it in the desert. There's a watch on the wrist that's just been cut. The driver then puts the watch in their front pocket, turns back to the passenger. "Help me at least." They load the body back in the car. Down the road they go. That's how this case starts.
Nice.
No, it's not nice.
Good case.
It's terrible.
No, it is a terrible case, but this is a good case.
Let's talk about this couple.
Who do we have here?
We have Darrin and Sharon Hale. Darrin's on the left, by the way.
Oh.
Darrin and Sharon Hale. They're in their mid-30s.
Driver's license photos, I'm guessing?
These are both driver's license photos. Okay. I need to explain a little bit while we're looking at the pictures here, just to kind of help our socialites. Some things you just can't take away from a photo necessarily. Darrin works graves. He has for quite a while. And he's in this role of working graveyards, coming home, enjoying his day at his home. Back to graves, back to home, back to graves, back to home.
He's a homebody.
Yeah, he'll hang out with his buddies at the bar once in a while, but for the most part, he's isolated at home. He enjoys his home. He enjoys just being by himself at home. And he'll crack a cold one in the morning because to him, he's just getting off work. He's coming home. So yeah, it's 7:30 in the morning for you, but it's 7:30 at night for him.
That's 2:00 for me in the afternoon.
That's so true. I married an 80-year-old. Sharon, on the other hand, is all about social networks. She's a little social butterfly. She makes contact with everybody she can. She's very articulate, very well-spoken, very classy. She's a classy chick. She gets her nails done on a regular basis. Her hair's done on a regular basis. She dresses to the nines. She's classy. She's a very classy chick. Now, a little bit more background with them. Darrin had a previous marriage. He has a son from this marriage. He's working at Intel, so like the chip manufacturer, he works in a clean room making microchips. Okay. Sharon also had a previous marriage, and she has a couple of kids. She now works at the VA. She's a veteran, so she was in the Army. And she works at the VA hospital, kind of as a receptionist cashier. There's times where they have to pay some of the patients for incidental expenses, and she's that person that does that. Oh, okay. They met early in 2005, dated for a few months, got married in May. Oh, very, very quick.
They moved very fast.
And this shocks a lot of Darrin's friends. Darrin,
why? He's
just this homebody. He's not this outgoing person. And then all of a sudden, he's just madly in love with this woman, and they just get married. So people are like, that was kind of interesting, a little bit outside of his norm. Okay. Tropical island paradise. I can't remember if it was St. Martin or one of those Caribbean destination weddings. Sure. But a nice little wedding.
On a little beach somewhere.
A little beach, yeah. I'm sure they were both wearing white.
They were barefoot in the sand. Yeah. Water lapping over their feet.
Dumb heart in the sand and took pictures probably.
With rose petals.
Yeah.
They had little towel swans on their bed at the end of the night.
Or maybe in the beginning of the night. I don't know about the end of the night, but yeah. It sounds great. Honeymoon's over. It's going to be somewhat of a tumultuous relationship. They argue a lot. They just don't get along. Darrin drinks quite a bit.
Okay.
I mean, not obsessively, but Sharon doesn't like that. So it makes her upset. He's not very engaging at home. He's not a big, like, hey, let's go to the movies type guy.
He's not the planner.
Yeah, or the executor. He doesn't want to go out and do anything. And they work opposite shifts. And you and I both know how that feels. It is hard to run a relationship when you're working completely opposite of each other.
Yeah.
Ultimately, this relationship is not going to end well. Like, there is a lot of issues starting here.
Okay.
Now, how do we get a good bead on what that is? A lot of rumors. We can talk to friends, but we actually have some police contact as well. So we're going to go back and look at the first police contact that they had was going to be mid-July of 2005. So if we do the timeline, they meet in early 2005. They get married in May of 2005. By July, 2 months after the marriage, we already have a 911 call for a domestic violence disorderly conduct call.
Oh dear. What was that call for? What was happening at the house?
There's several different versions of this. Possibly Darrin attempting to slash Sharon's tires with a knife, having a knife as he's walking around, Sharon somehow being threatened with the knife, but it's very vague. So there isn't clear details. And quite honestly, the reporting's not that good. You're going to see a reoccurring trend here.
Okay.
Long story short, Darrin gets arrested for domestic violence disorderly conduct. So they actually physically arrest and they book Darrin. He is released the next day and all charges are dropped just because it's a really weak case.
Okay.
So when I say there's some issues with the report, to the extent that this case is going to be dropped. However, 911, police were called, police showed up, Darrin went to jail.
So some DV history is beginning here.
100%. So there's clearly, the honeymoon's over. Right?
Yeah.
We're not living
It's not fun anymore.
Yeah, we're not living in tropical paradise anymore.
Okay.
So we're going to fast forward. They're going to make it a few months, and we're going to get to December of 2005. So December 6th, police department gets a call because Darrin has an order of protection to serve on Sharon. He's thrown her out of the house, and he wants law enforcement to serve this document, basically, that gives her 20 minutes to get her shit and get.
Oh.
Sharon is beside herself. She's bawling. She's very emotional. She's asking the police officer, like, what is going on here? And the police officer's trying to explain, look, we don't get into the details. The court ordered this. We have to serve it to you. You have 20 minutes. Get your belongings. You have to leave. You cannot have contact with him, or you cannot be at this house or anywhere near the house.
Did that include her children?
Her children aren't living with him at the time.
Okay.
So his oldest is there and is going to stay there, but Sharon's out.
Okay.
The officer explains, hey, this is a court order. There's nothing I can do about it. On the back of this court order, right here, you can fill this out and you can request a hearing, and the judge will schedule a hearing and you can go explain your side. Darrin will have to explain his side and the judge will decide long term. But for the time being, this is an enforceable court order. If you come back, we have to arrest you. And it's domestic violence, so we don't have a choice. We have to arrest you. Don't come back.
What was his reasoning in the order of protection that he wanted that in place?
She was a threat to him, and literally, like, she was probably going to kill him. He was in fear of his life, because that's what you have to do for these orders of protection. It can't just be, oh, she's mean.
I don't want him around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's in fear of his life. Now, there's something also about the finances going on at this point, and it's not super clear, but essentially it sounds like there might be a struggle over the house. So we got to talk about the house here a little bit.
Okay.
Darrin purchased this house prior to the marriage. So he lived in it. When they got married, they moved in together into Darrin's home. Now, granted, they're married, but Darrin's the only one that has his name on this mortgage. He's the only one that has it on the title. So at this point, it's Darrin's house.
Okay.
Apparently, there's some arguments going back and forth on the house, and they either did or want to cash out some money, and how that works. It's very convoluted at this point. And I don't know all the details, and neither did law enforcement at that point. So there's just the struggle over the house as well.
Okay.
Sharon's going to follow through, though. She's going to file her request for a hearing on the order of protection. Oh. So on December 9th, there's going to be a hearing, and they're going to go into court. Sharon is going to explain, Your Honor, I don't know what's going on with this guy. He's a drunk. He uses drugs. In fact, we have a son who's on probation. Probation officer came over to do an inspection, found marijuana on the table, and accused the son of having it, it was Darrin's. And so she's kind of diming him out. He's a drunk. He's constantly wasting our money.
He got weed.
He got weed. Oh, by the way, he got arrested for domestic violence. He tries to slash my tires. And all this is on the record. So we know exactly what she said. She paints this picture that Darrin's just a jerk.
Okay.
And he's very threatening towards her. And there's this whole knife incident that he got arrested for.
So it sounds like there's a lot of he said, she said now going on in this relationship.
At this stage, there is.
Yeah.
Yes. Darrin is going to kind of counter to the judge, hey, Your Honor, that whole DV thing was total BS. She made it all up. It was so weak that they dropped charges. I don't drink like she's explaining. I don't know what she's talking about with the drugs. Like, she's trying to refinance my house. And this is the first time we get a little bit of a picture that it sounds like this fight is stemming over Sharon doing something where she's trying to refinance his house. Now, they're married, but Darrin's taking it very personal that community property doesn't apply. It's my house. She shouldn't be doing anything with my house.
Yeah.
And typically judges don't respond well to that because, yeah, it's community property. Welcome to the marriage.
Yeah.
What's yours is hers and vice versa.
You should have thought about that before you eloped.
You could have seen it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the judge is going to reverse the order, and now Sharon can come back to the house.
Oh.
So that's December 9th. So
Okay.
marriage in May, DV in July, order protection served 1st of December. December 9th, Sharon's back to the house, moving on.
Okay.
You good with all that?
Yeah.
We're going to go to what I call the first harmful event.
Okay.
December.
There's lots of harmful events in this.
You're going to find that I have multiple. So on the 9th, she moves back in. On the 20th, so what are we talking, 11 days later, Darrin's son, whose name is DJ, is going to come into the police lobby and report Darrin missing. The officer is going to come out into the lobby and speak with DJ very, very briefly. Hey, what's up, son? How can I help you? Hey, my dad's missing. He's been missing since the 17th. I think he went to work on the 17th. I haven't seen him since. It's really weird. He doesn't have a vehicle. He doesn't have a cell phone. He just works and comes home. He hasn't been to work. He hasn't come home.
How does he usually get to work?
He has to get rides. He gets rides everywhere. And that's how DJ knows, is DJ gives him rides all the time. DJ is just painting this picture. This is not normal.
Does DJ usually pick him up from work as well?
I think DJ is his primary source of transportation. So yes, picks him up, drops him off. He'll get rides with the coworkers. Sharon will pick him up and drop him off. You're really concerned about this lack of car.
Yeah, like, well, to me, he works at Intel. He seems like he would have a good paycheck. He has a house. He has a mortgage. It's weird that he wouldn't have a car.
You know, it's interesting you're asking that. You're jumping ahead, so I'll give you this one. Sharon wanted a Cadillac really, really bad. Not just any Cadillac. In 2005, that's the year of our case here. Cadillac had a CTS. It was like the Cadillac coupe sports car.
Yeah, I remember.
4-door.
It was a really nice car.
It was very popular.
Yeah.
Sharon wanted a Cadillac CTS.
Okay.
It was a little bit out of their price range.
Okay.
So they came up with a compromise. DJ is going to buy Sharon's car, which is this old piece of crap Honda. Darrin will buy Sharon the Cadillac CTS. And then they'll both just give Darrin rides because he only goes to and from work anyway.
He doesn't need a car to get anywhere. Okay.
So that's why Darrin doesn't have a car. It's because he spent all of his money on Sharon's car.
Oh, that's an interesting negotiation. Okay.
Good trade.
Good trade.
Yeah. Back to trying to report his dad missing. I'm not making this up. We have the police reports. Son, sometimes dads just need a break. They just take a little break. It's only been a few days. I'm sure he's going to come back home. There's really nothing here to act on right now. Just go back home, be patient. We'll see what happens.
That's quite an assumption to make on behalf of that officer.
They pretty much tell DJ, see ya, we're not doing anything. No reports taken.
Didn't take a report.
Did not take a report.
Okay.
DJ goes home and tells Sharon, hey, I tried to report dad missing. They pretty much kicked me out of the lobby and said sometimes that's what dads do. So
they just leave? They just don't.
I mean, I'm not
show
going to
up?
lie. I've been to the point several times with my kids where I'm like, I just need a break. I'm going
With
to
your
disappear.
kids or a spouse?
Maybe both. I didn't want to admit the latter. But yeah, like I just need a break. I can't think of any time I've ever disappeared for maybe more than an hour. So it is a little weird that, hey, we're talking 3 days he's been gone with no communication.
Yeah.
So DJ tells Sharon, hey, they wouldn't take the report. And Sharon's like, what do you mean they wouldn't take the report? Yeah, they won't take the report. Well, I'll go talk to him. So she goes down to the police department. And this, where do we draw the line? Remember when she got served the order of protection? Well, when she goes in the lobby to file a missing persons report on her husband, she talks to the little lady at the front desk. They call an officer. The officer comes in the lobby to talk to Sharon. It's the same officer.
Who filed the order of protection on her.
Who served her with the order of protection.
Oh my gosh.
So, like, it's kind of a reunion. Like, oh, hello, Mrs. Hale. How are you? Oh, hello, Officer Mr. Nice. How are you? And is everything okay? Oh, yeah, the judge took back that order of protection. Such a nice judge. Like, they have this little conversation. So he knows the prior, this
history.
Relationship was a little rocky.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, how can I help you? Well, remember my husband who served the order of protection? Oh, yeah. He's missing.
Okay.
He's like, okay, well, how long has he been missing? Since the 17th. Well, what's going on? I don't know. You know, I told you he was a drunk. He's probably on this drunk binger somewhere. But we're starting to get worried. So I wanted you guys to take a report. Well, has he been threatened? Is there any reason to feel anything's wrong? And she's like, I can't imagine anything bad happening. Mm-hmm. He's just not, we just don't know where he's at. He's not coming home.
Okay.
He's probably in a ditch drunk or taking drugs. And he's like, well, that's really not a missing person. That's somebody out partying that just hasn't come home. Yeah, not a lot we can do.
And she explained how long it had been.
He's been gone for 3 days.
Okay.
And they're like, well, you know, let's give it some more time.
So
Maybe
she
he'll
went
come
in
home
the same day that DJ went in.
within a couple hours.
2 different officers basically telling them, meh, let's give it a little bit more time.
He's only missing. It's not that big of a
Okay.
deal. That was the second harmful event. Let's move on to the third harmful event. Christmas comes. Packages, celebration, family. By the way, Sharon's kids and some of her family fly in from back east. It's this big Christmas celebration at Darrin's house without Darrin.
Oh my gosh.
Hey,
And
where's Darrin? He went on a binger.
is DJ there as well?
DJ's there. Getting a little weird now, right?
Yeah.
December 28th. There is pressure being put on Sharon now by Darrin's family. Lives in a different state. Like, hey, something's wrong. We're pushing well over 10 days. We need the police to get involved. Something isn't right here. Go back and talk to them. So she goes back in on the 28th. Now, you might have thought what happened on the 20th was interesting. Mm-hmm. What happens on the 28th is even better.
Why?
I'd tell you, but the officer can't remember.
What do you mean?
It was an officer in training.
They didn't take a report?
They didn't
again?
take a report. Later on, this officer is asked, hey, on this particular day, this lady came in. She was trying to report her husband missing. Mm-hmm. What did she tell you? And the officer thinks about it for a minute and just basically said, I don't remember. I vaguely remember being in the lobby and talking to her, but I don't remember what she said.
And he was an in-training officer.
So he had a field training officer standing right next to him the whole time. So, hey, field training officer, what did she say? Man, I don't remember.
Oh my gosh.
There's no doubt she was there to report him missing because the call comments that generated the call, lady here to report her husband missing.
So the field training officer pretty much told the ITO, we don't
Not
need
much
to
we
take
can do.
reports like this.
Right. So,
Oh my
there
gosh.
she goes. That was on December 28th. Now we're going to go to the next call for service to report poor Darrin missing. It's going to be December 29th.
So this is 4 times now.
This will be the 4th report. But things are going to change. First of all, it's 10:30 at night. All the others were in the middle of the day. Now it's 10:30 at night. It's an attorney. And an attorney wants a detective to call him because he has a client who's missing and he thinks there's some sort of foul play.
Oh.
So an officer calls the attorney back and is like, hey, got your call for service. What's up? Yeah, I've got this client and he came and saw me and he's basically hiring me because he found out that his wife had refinanced the house without his knowledge. And what he's really concerned about is he actually found the refinance documents and his signature, well, somebody posing as him signed some documents that isn't his signature. And he found out that his wife cashed out over $200,000, never told him, and hid the money. So he goes to an attorney and he explains to the attorney, hey, this is what my wife did. I want out of this refinance. I want the money back. Oh, and I want a divorce. But, Mr. Attorney, if she finds out that I know, she'll kill me.
Oh my gosh.
By the way, Mr. Attorney, I'm a very punctual man. If I ever miss an appointment, it's because I'm dead. Call the cops.
He saw it coming.
He saw it coming and he missed an appointment. And the attorney was like, oh dear. Attorney reaches out to DJ. DJ's like, he's been missing. And the attorney's like, oh God, he's dead. So that's why he's calling. This gets even crazier.
Okay.
So the officer asks the attorney, can you give me a little bit more information? What's going on? When did you last meet with him? When did you last see him alive? Things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the attorney explains, well, he came in for a meeting, but it was really weird because Sharon was with him. And of course the officer's like, wait, he brought Sharon to the meeting about his divorce? And the attorney says, yes, he totally did. But she followed him there and then just walked in the door with him.
As in she stalked him?
As in she stalked him there. And it was really awkward. So I suggested to them, hey, I'm with another client. It's going to be another hour or so. Maybe we can meet later, come back, you're early.
So he's trying to open the door to Darrin to get out of the situation.
What's going on? Right.
Okay.
So Darrin and Sharon go down the street to Red Lobster and have lunch.
Okay.
The investigation's going to show that Sharon figured out that Darrin was talking to an attorney just prior to this appointment, and she does literally follow him.
Do we know how she found out he was talking to an attorney?
I think she found phone calls to this attorney. So she started following him around, and when he pulled up to the attorney's office, she gets out of her car, and he just realizes, oh crap.
How did he get to the attorney's office if he doesn't have a car?
He borrowed DJ's car. DJ even texted him after he left the house, hey Dad, I think she's following you.
Oh dear.
He gets out of his car and he's walking up to the front door of the attorney's office, and he sees Sharon. And Sharon says, what are you doing? He says, I'm seeing my attorney. And she responds, you mean our attorney?
That's community property too.
Right. So they end up at Red Lobster. And at Red Lobster, Darrin is trying to explain away that he has a tax debt and that this is a tax attorney. And there's this big cover-up that he's trying to show, oh no, dear, everything's fine. Don't kill me.
And she believed that he had some tax issues?
I don't believe so. It doesn't appear so. But she agrees not to go back to the attorney's office.
Her goal was to let him know that she was on to him.
I know what you know, yeah.
She was threatening him, basically.
Yes, yeah. So he goes back after Red Lobster. She's not with him. And the attorney's asking, what the hell? So he explains this whole thing. That's when the attorney tells him, you need an order of protection. She's going to kill you. Mm-hmm. And he's and Darrin at that point's like, I guess so. I don't know. And the attorney makes it very clear, you need to go get this order of protection. Okay. So that's why he gets the order of protection.
Upon his attorney's advice.
Upon his attorney's advice.
Did he notate? Well, he couldn't have notated that in the order of protection, or she would have known. Oh my goodness.
Guess what? They're going to take the report. There's enough.
Finally.
Yeah, there's enough to take the report now. So the officer is then going to hang up with the attorney and immediately call Sharon. Hey, Sharon. Hello, officer so-and-so. Is your husband missing? Oh, yes, he's been missing since December 17th. We've been in there 3 times. You guys won't take the report. Okay, well, we're taking the report now. What's going on? Well, we've been arguing a little bit. We had some financial issues. But he's big time drinker, into drugs. He's probably out on a binger. I've tried to get him into rehab. I've done some other things. I don't know. I'm sure he's going to turn up. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, do you have a recent picture of your husband? Nope. Now remember, they just got married. She won't give him a picture.
Wait, she won't give him a picture, or she actually didn't have any pictures?
Do you think that they traveled to a wedding destination in the islands and didn't take a single picture of their wedding?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Of course
did they just
she
never
has a
get
picture.
Developed?
No, she will never turn a picture over for Darrin. The only picture we end up getting is his driver's license photo. That's why we had the driver's license photo in the beginning.
And DJ didn't have a picture of his dad?
Not a lot of pictures out there.
Oh my gosh.
So this officer explains that they're going to be forwarding the case to detectives and they'll be in contact. Now I want to keep our timeline because it's so important on this case.
Okay.
He goes missing on the 17th. There's multiple attempts to report him. Finally, a report gets taken on December 29th. Mm-hmm. It's New Year's, baby. What does law enforcement do for New Year's? Detectives.
House parties.
Yeah, detectives do not work during the holidays. That's when they get their time off and they try to take their time off. If there's a major case that breaks out, obviously call out. But short of that, everything is getting pushed to the first of the year. Now, there's going to be some major mistakes going on here. Mm-hmm. We've got to get into this because, like I said, you're going to see a reoccurring theme. At the time, this police department had a civilian investigator in the investigations unit who was responsible for like runaway juveniles, missing persons. They assign this case to her. No fault of her. She was great at what she did. But I think it's safe to say Darrin's case is probably beyond a missing person at this point.
Yeah.
So it gets assigned to her the first week of January. She kind of pushes it over to a detective. It finally gets assigned to the detective on the 18th. The first time a detective reaches out to DJ that, hey, I'm going to be your case detective, and actually leaves a voicemail, the 18th of January. Darrin has now been missing for a month. There is no investigation that has happened. None.
Wow.
There's a conversation on the 19th that DJ is going to return this, and this is the first real documentation from DJ about what's happening. Hey, is anything missing? Did your dad take anything? And DJ's, no, I don't think so. His passport's still there. His clothes are still there. He did have a pager. He had a work pager, but he doesn't have a car. Sharon said he took a handful of clothes, but I wouldn't know if he did or not. I don't know his clothes, but everything else is still at the house.
So you said he had a work pager. Had anyone from work heard from him?
No. There was a Christmas party on December 16th, the day before he went missing. That's when he was last seen by coworkers, was at that Christmas party. He never went into work on the 17th.
Okay.
So that's all pretty ironed out. We've got a good beat on that.
Okay.
DJ retells to the officer, Sharon keeps saying he's just out doing his thing. He'll be back whenever he gets back. But I kind of have an issue because she's got these other men that have been staying at the house.
Does she say that, or does DJ tell them this?
DJ is telling the detective. It's weird because she keeps saying he's going to be back any day, but she's clearly with other men now. There was her ex-husband kept coming to the house around Christmas and after Christmas and staying the night. And now she's hanging out with this white guy.
And staying the night in her room?
Yeah. He's not sleeping on the couch.
Right.
It starts to get really interesting with this relationships, if you will,
Yeah.
of what's going on there. So February 2nd is the first scheduled interview. DJ, some of Darrin's family, and Sharon are all going to start talking to detectives individually on February 2nd. And we kind of have some dueling interviews. This gets a little bit comical itself. So Sharon's interviews, they're more of updates. Hey, Sharon, we've done X, Y, and Z. We haven't heard anything. What's your thoughts? Oh, no, he'll be home any day. So she's not really pushing it either.
Yeah.
On January 26th, she does make a note. Oh, hey, I got into Darrin's computer. I just wanted you guys to know I found the last email that he ever sent or received. It was just before he went missing, and it was about increasing his life insurance and naming me as the beneficiary. I don't know if that's important to your guys' investigation, but it looks like he sent that just before he left. No red flags there. And then the detective says, well, Sharon, can you give us a written statement? And there's a reason we ask for written statements. We want to see what somebody says unprovoked, just writing naturally, right? Mm-hmm. And we can't really use it against her, but she takes offense. She pretty much uses the entire written statement to bitch about how lacking the investigation is. But at the same time, she keeps saying, he's probably just out on a binger. He'll be home any day. There's also going to be an interview with a coworker by the name of Jim Pittman. And Jim was a good friend of Darrin's who comes forward later on. And this is really going to give some insight.
Okay.
Darrin comes to work mid-November with the refinance documents. So he and Jim are in the locker room getting ready to go into the clean room where you have to change your clothes and you wear these little sterile suits. Mm-hmm. And he's showing Jim the paperwork. Can you believe what she did? She got somebody to pose as me, sign my name. She refinanced for over $200,000. I don't know where the cash is.
So Jim sees it coming.
Jim is like, buddy, you got to get out of there. You need to go to an attorney. You need to leave. What else is she capable? And who's the guy that looks like you? What is he going to do to you? And women don't just pull out a bunch of cash because they want to go to Dillard's. What is her plan? Life insurance. She increased your life insurance. So this spins out of control quickly, and Jim Pittman sees it coming and is the one who pushes Darrin to go see the attorney, who pushes Darrin to go get the order of protection. So yeah, there's multiple levels now that are starting to come out. Now this opens up a different prong of the investigation. This sounds very fraudulent. And sometimes on a homicide case, if we can make another case work really good, it gives us a little bit more latitude to get over things. So at the same time, a fraud investigation is going to take off on this case. They're going to figure out where the house was refinanced, go to the title company, pull the original paperwork that was signed, send it off for fingerprints. And sure enough, we get a fingerprint hit right next to the male signature. And it looks nothing like Darrin's signature, by the way. It's terrible representation of it.
So I have a question. Did anybody actually interview the finance officer?
Yes.
Did the finance officer say anything about this transaction being a little odd?
I don't remember anything, and he didn't say much.
But you have to show an identification. Did the ID look like Darrin at all?
She doesn't recall, but she knows she would have asked for ID and she would have looked at it, but she doesn't have any recollection of that specific transaction.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Fingerprints do come back, though, and it is a male's fingerprint, and it actually comes back to a guy by the name of Richard Thompson. A little bit of work, we find out very quickly, Richard Thompson is a co-worker of Sharon Hale's. They work at the VA hospital together. In fact, they carpool. They're carpool partners. Now, Richard's kind of a thug.
Okay.
Or he comes across very thuggish, kind of gangster thuggish.
Okay.
So I was assigned as the first detective to go out and find Richard. That was my first real involvement on this case is, hey, we have this guy. We need to go find him. We need him for an interview.
We have a fraud case. Please go interview this guy.
It wasn't for the interview so much more as to find him. Richard was kind of difficult to find. He had left the VA at this point, if I remember correctly, and nobody could find him. And one of my knacks back then was I was really good at finding people. So I wasn't really involved in the case at all. Mm-hmm. I was just asked, hey, can you help find him? We really need to talk to this guy.
You still have a knack for this.
Yeah, so I find him, and the first contact I have is by phone. Hey, Richard Thompson, I'm calling you about a homicide investigation that the agency's working on here. Do you know a Sharon Hale? No, man, I don't know that person. And I'm thinking, dude, we already know your carpool partners. You guys work together. We have your work records, but I'm not saying this.
Yeah.
So I just spin it really quick. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting, Richard, because we're doing a homicide investigation into her husband, Darrin Hale. And it appears that you might have been involved in signing some mortgage documents with Sharon Hale where you actually went to the mortgage office and signed these documents. Ah, shit, I know her. I had nothing to do with this. Whatever you guys need, I'm in. So he went from very thug to state witness in 2 seconds.
He will not be an accomplice of a crime.
Yeah, he is not going to be an accomplice. So they bring Richard in. He's more than happy to come in right now. Richard says there is actually a long history of domestic violence between Sharon and Darrin, most of it unreported. All of it told to Richard by Sharon. So Sharon has painted this picture that Darrin is very violent with her.
When he says a long history, he realizes they were married for less than a year.
Yeah, I don't know that he knew all that. But because of Darrin's drinking and their issues, they're going to split up and they're selling the house. But they've got to get some things straight. And they had this meeting at the title company. And do you know what Darrin did? He got too drunk. He passed out and she couldn't wake him up. And if they don't get this document signed, they're not going to be able to sell the house. They've got all kinds of problems. Hey, buddy, I need help. Can you please go? You kind of look like Darrin. He looks nothing like Darrin. You kind of look like Darrin. Practice his signature. All you have to do is come in with me. Just sit there, shut up, don't say anything. I'll give them the IDs. When they give you the piece of paper, sign it, and we're out.
That's what I'm saying. If he looked nothing like Darrin, how did this get past the mortgage officer? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think it's probably more common than you think. Oh, by the way, if you do this for me, friend, I'll pay you $500.
Oh.
Richard's got some hesitations, but he's thinking she's in a bad spot. I can help. This is probably just some crazy title loan type thing they're doing.
And he's under the belief that she's this abused spouse.
Yeah, he didn't understand it was her refinancing. And as he's sitting there and she's being walked through these documents, he realizes for the first time, this chick's refinancing their house, and I'm posing as the husband. Oh, this isn't good. But they're in the middle of Phoenix. He lives way out in the East Valley. He doesn't have a car either. And he's convinced that if he doesn't sign it, Sharon's going to leave him there because Sharon's that type of person.
Yeah.
So he signs it somewhat under duress, or so he says. But then he also brings up, by the way, I never got paid. Mm-hmm. So at this point, we're clearly getting a different picture painted than what we initially
of who Sharon
seeing.
Really is.
Yeah, so we have the comments to Jim Pittman, the attorney, which really opens some things up. The order of protection, maybe she really was a threat to him at that time, right? It's starting to make a little bit more sense. And at the end of the day, it's very clear. Darrin saw this coming. The February 2nd interviews finally take place. And like I said before, they're kind of these dueling interviews back and forth. It's comical, where you can peer in on one, and it's Sharon being interviewed, and the detective asks, well, how do you get along with his son, DJ? Oh, DJ loves me. And then literally you could look at the other interview and a detective is asking DJ, oh, hey, DJ, so Sharon, tell us about Sharon. Oh, I hate that bitch. Right. There's this, they are clearly at odds, but she's painting this very beautiful pictures, rainbows, flowers, everybody's fine. And DJ's just dropping dimes on her left and right in the other room. So it's kind of this interesting back and forth. So let's get into the last thing DJ remembers with his dad. He wakes up in the morning to Sharon and Darrin fighting. This is how he wakes up the day his dad goes missing.
On December 17th.
If you look at the other interview really quick, Sharon's explaining to the detective, oh, we woke up that morning and made love.
Oh my gosh.
So when you hear the two side by side, it's like, oh, come on.
Then we made pancakes.
Yeah. DJ explains this argument was over the night before because some female had called the house asking for Darrin. Long story short, Darrin gets to the Christmas party for work. He drinks way too much. He can't get home. He borrows one of his coworkers' phone because he doesn't have a phone. He calls the house. Nobody answers. She sees the caller ID, sees that it's this phone number that comes back to this female she recognizes as one of his coworkers. So she's thinking, why is this chick calling my house? So she calls the lady back, asks for an address of where they're at, and tells this lady to tell Darrin she's on her way. So this lady tells Darrin, hey, your wife just called me. She's on the way. And Darrin's like, oh, I used your phone to call her because I needed a ride. She's going to be pissed. He calls DJ, come get me. Beat Sharon here because I don't want to ride with Sharon.
Yeah.
So they're laughing about this later in the kitchen the next morning because DJ's kind of making fun of him. And when DJ woke up, he heard his dad getting the wrath from Sharon because of this female interaction from the night before. There's nothing going on. It's all fine, but it was just kind of this drunken mess.
And this is Sharon's version.
This is a little bit of a combination of both. Now, DJ's going to explain that when he did get up, he was asked by Sharon to follow her to the bank to make his car payment to her. Remember, she sold him her car to get the Cadillac.
Yeah.
So he's making payments. So he goes to the bank with Sharon, pulls out some money, gives it to Sharon. Sharon leaves and runs errands. He will not see Sharon again the rest of the day. Sharon corroborates this in her interview, 100%, except she was doing Christmas shopping, but she was on the west side. Now, for some of our listeners, it might be getting confusing of the car situation. So just to recap, Sharon wanted a new Cadillac CTS.
Yes.
They couldn't afford it.
Right.
Sharon had a car, Darrin had a car. Mm-hmm. DJ did not have a car.
Yes.
The idea of how we can afford this, Darrin will trade his car in for the Cadillac. Sharon will sell her car to DJ. So on this morning, the 17th, when Darrin goes missing, Sharon needs cash. DJ bought her car, so she wants DJ to go to the bank and pull money out to give her some cash for that month's car payment. Oh, okay. So this is what happens that morning is DJ and Sharon leave at the same time around 10 a.m., two separate cars. They drive to the bank. DJ pulls cash out, gives it to Sharon. Sharon goes Christmas shopping. DJ goes back home.
Was this his regular day to give her the payment for the car? Do we know?
I don't.
Interesting.
DJ kind of takes a quick nap. He's going to go to work at 1 p.m. and he doesn't see his dad when he comes back, but his dad works graves, so he's just assuming his dad is asleep.
Sure.
He goes to work at 1, comes home around 9, and as soon as he comes home, the first thing he notices is there's a big hole in the wall in the laundry room, and he's never seen that before. Sharon's very OCD in keeping a clean house. Everything she keeps is spick and span.
Okay.
So he kind of freaks out. So he calls Sharon. He's, hey, what's going on with this hole? And Sharon was like, oh, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Have you seen your dad, by the way? And DJ's thinking, well, no, he'd be at work. He wouldn't be home. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to stay at my brother's house because I'm on the west side. I did all my Christmas shopping. I'll be back home in the morning. DJ doesn't think much about it. He thinks dad's at work. So he goes to bed. Darrin never comes home after that. But that's how the 17th plays out. So Sharon's gone all day Christmas shopping. DJ comes home. Dad's allegedly at work, but he's not. Sees the hole in the wall. Life goes on. By the way, officer, this is DJ, by the way.
In his interview.
These men that keep coming to the house, it's weird.
Why?
Well, they're staying the night, and they have no concerns of my dad coming home. They know he's missing, allegedly, but you would think if you're going to come sleep in the bed of the wife whose husband is missing, what if he comes back to the house while you're in that bed?
Yeah.
These men don't care.
Saying he'll be home anytime.
Right, but it's very clear they come and go as they want.
How many men are we talking about?
At least 2. The ex-husband, which we'll get to here in a little bit, and this other white guy, he's a landscaper by the name of Teddy Berry. So
Teddy Berry.
Law enforcement is going to confirm, are you sure your dad doesn't have a cell phone? No, there's no cell phone, no car. Oh, by the way, the other thing that's really weird, Sharon changed the locks right after dad went missing.
Was DJ able to get back into the house at all?
She gave him a key. Just Darrin wouldn't have a key if he did come home.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
DJ kind of summarizes his whole interview with, yeah, I don't think this is good. I think something really bad has happened to my dad. He knew about this refinancing. He told me that he was really concerned with it. And he actually told me, hey, son, I think I need to get a gun.
Oh.
And of course, when DJ drops that bomb, the investigators are thinking, oh, crap.
He was in fear of his life.
He was in fear of his life. Sharon's interview goes pretty much the exact same. She doesn't say anything about the gun or anything like that, but she is confirming the same order of events that DJ did that day.
Okay.
What's interesting is at the end of her interview, this interview is in a secure area upstairs, so the detective has to walk her downstairs in the lobby. When he gets down to the lobby, there's a dude waiting for Sharon. So the detective's kind of watching. Sharon walks out like everything's fine. This guy meets her. As they go out the lobby doors into the parking lot, like they have this big embrace, like they're making out. They're kissing.
Was this Teddy Berry?
This is Teddy Berry, which is really interesting because we had somebody else call us the very next day and say, hey, you need to go check out this tattoo shop. Sharon just got a tattoo. And of course, the detective's thinking, why does that matter? The tattoo? My Ocean Breeze, Teddy B.
Oh my gosh. How long has she known? Did Teddy B do her landscaping?
I don't know why you're having so many issues with this.
Wait, did he do her landscaping?
Oh, I think it's safe to say he did her landscaping.
No, I don't mean like that. Well, yeah, but how does she know him? From the VA?
Landscaper. Darrin wasn't there to cut her grass anymore, so she had to find somebody else to cut her grass. Literally.
Oh my gosh. So why did she choose to have him take her to the police department for the interview?
It's moral support, I guess. I mean, she got a tattoo that says My Ocean Breeze, Teddy B. Clearly, he's an emotional support animal for
pal.
her. Yeah.
An emotional support pal?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously,
okay.
This is going to raise some eyebrows for the investigation.
I thought you said she was a classy lady. She got My Ocean Breeze, Teddy B.
Told you she's class act. Okay, I think it's an understatement at this point to say things are looking highly suspicious. Sharon may have done or had something done to Darrin. I think that's a pretty clear picture at this point.
Yeah.
Which might be hard from some of our socialites. Because when we first started talking about domestic violence, brutal murder,
usually you're
and
envisioning...
we showed pictures of Darrin and Sharon, and I explained a little bit of their background, I would be willing to say probably 95% or more of our socialites immediately thought that son of a bitch.
The male was the perpetrator.
Yeah. It's been 3 months now since Darrin has gone missing. We have no solid evidence. Investigators finally decide to get Sharon's phone records. This is 2005. I mentioned that before. It's the Wild West when it comes to phone records. Phone records are really just starting to become a regular thing in criminal investigations. Sharon had Sprint at the time. Sprint, in 2005, they only kept cell tower data for 90 days. So by the time law enforcement makes the decision to go after Sharon's phone records, there will be no cell site information. We can see who she called, who called her, but we'll never get location data. Had they done this in the first 90 days, we would have solved this case in about 10 minutes. It's that obvious.
Wow.
But they didn't. So we're going to have to do this one the hard way. We can still get tolls. And when I talk about tolls, we're going to see date, time, duration, and the phone number. So any phone call she made or received or text message she made or received, we'll see that. We'll see the date and the time, how long it lasted, but we're never going to see where the location is. So we went for a lot. And this is when I start getting involved again, is I'm being asked, hey, can we get the Sprint stuff? You haven't already gotten it. It's gone. This should have been, this is the first box you check typically on these type of cases, right? Okay, since we're not going to get location, we're going to go for an entire year's worth of records. So we're going to get all of her call detail records for a 12-month period. She has 3,500 phone calls in that 12 months.
Which you can tell a lot from a year's worth of activity of somebody just making calls to and from somebody or text messaging.
You absolutely can. So we're going to start with what I call cellular demology. We talked about this before, but it's basically looking at pattern of life through phone calls, exactly what you just said. The first device of interest we're going to get. The day Darrin goes missing, December 17th, she called the number, outgoing calls from Sharon's phone to this other number 4 times. Mm-hmm. So when I see that, the first thing I'm going to ask is that normal? Does she normally call this person? Looked a few days before, nothing. A few weeks before, nothing. A month before, nothing. So she just all of a sudden up out of nowhere called this number the day Darrin goes missing 4 times in a row. I went back an entire year. She had never called this number for an entire year except for one other occasion, October 27th, which is her birthday.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I'm thinking, okay, this stands out. So I identify this device, and it's clearly of interest. Who is this person? What's going on? Quick check shows it belongs to a Clarence Moton, M-O-T-O-N.
Okay.
Now, I got a picture here of Clarence. That might be a booking photo.
Clear the gray background, yeah.
Yeah, now Clarence might be what I would classify as a career criminal.
You think? Okay.
When he was 22, that was 1973, he went to prison for theft. Got out after a couple years, but in 1975, he went back for robbery. Got out after a few years, 1988, he goes back for forgery. Did some time, got out again. In 1994, he goes back again for robbery.
Okay.
Does some more time, gets out, 1999, stealing a car, back to prison. And he had just gotten out in early 2005 when we
Sharon
get to this
calls
case.
a professional.
Apparently, it looked like that. From 1973 to 2005, right? It's a time period of 32 years. He spent more than 24 years of this in prison.
Wow.
That's what I mean by a career criminal. Now, you would think, well, wow, that's a pretty impressive history. When you look at the crimes he committed in prison, even worse. He committed twice this number of crimes in prison, to include 3 different sexual assault charges in prison.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm not going to call him a shithead because I am reformed, but he has some mental health issues going on that I think we need to recognize.
Possibly some drug use as well?
Yeah, and I think some of these mental health issues gives the appearance that he's a shithead, but I'm not going to use that word because I'm reformed. All of these crimes are not my favorite crime that Clarence does, though. When Clarence gets out of prison, he doesn't have a driver's license. He doesn't have registration. He does not have car insurance, but he's driving in a car. He's stuck in traffic when a fire truck passes him running code. He pulls right in behind the fire truck and follows it for several miles. So later on, when the cops pull him over, what are you doing? He's on parole with no driver's license, no car insurance, and no registration. Like, Clarence just doesn't care.
Oh my
is
gosh.
the moral of the story there. There may be some genetics going on here because Clarence also has a son by the name of Thomas. Thomas killed his children's mother in the parking lot of their preschool.
This is a very violent family.
Very violent family. Thomas Moton is also in prison for the rest of his life. In fact, I think he is possibly on death row. So there is clearly some issues with this family. And I don't think I've mentioned yet, this is Sharon's dad. So Sharon is also his offspring.
Again, a very violent family.
Very violent family, it appears.
So this is Sharon's dad. How long did you say it was since they had a call prior to her birthday?
When he gets out of prison in early 2005, there are no phone calls between the two of them until October 27th, which is her birthday. So roughly 10 months.
Okay.
Then from October 27th all the way to December 17th, no calls. Then on December 17th, Sharon calls him 4 times, which I could find no history of her ever doing before.
And we don't know if she'd ever gone to actually visit him in prison or anything like that.
It doesn't appear so, but no, nothing that we could find.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is a significant phone call.
Phone calls, 4 of them.
How long were those calls?
All of them a couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. Enough that there's some conversation. It's not just a quick voicemail.
Okay.
So obviously we need to go interview Clarence. We figure out where his apartment is. And when we knock on the door, Clarence is super high. The apartment is just full of marijuana smoke. It's like a Cheech and Chong movie.
Okay.
So I'm with another detective, and we ask Clarence, "Hey, Clarence, do you know Sharon Hale?" And he's like, "Who? Sharon Hale. Do you know Sharon Hale? Never heard of her. Your daughter. Oh, yeah, she's a good girl." But just totally going in circles with this stuff.
It's hard interviewing people on drugs.
Oh, yeah. We ask if he is Clarence, and he tells us the same thing. Never heard of him. And we have a driver's license photo of Clarence. And I'm looking at the driver's license photo. "Hey, Clarence, do you mind if we come in?" "Oh, sure, come on in." When I call him Clarence, he acknowledges it. But if I ask him if he's Clarence, never heard of him.
Right.
It's just this really
or if
weird.
he knows Clarence.
Yeah, so the quick rundown of this interview is he does know Darrin. He admits that he's met Darrin a couple times, doesn't like him, thinks that he's very abusive to his daughter, can't cite anything directly, just what Sharon's told him. "When did you last see or speak to Sharon?" "Who?" Never heard of her. When was the last time you spoke to your daughter? Oh, last week, right? So we keep this back and forth. He'll never acknowledge the name Sharon, but he acknowledges his daughter.
Yeah.
But he knows who Darrin is, which is Sharon's husband. It's the craziest conversation. As we keep going in circles with him, he's just talking in circles, and I'm realizing he is super high. He could admit to the entire murder right now, and we would never be able to use this. Like, this is a worthless interview.
Sure.
So I tell the detective we're with, hey, what are we going to get out of this guy at this point? We can't use anything he's saying. We don't have anything solid. Have a good day, Clarence. We'll see you later. And it was pretty clear to me at that point, he's a criminal, but he is not a mastermind.
Right.
I don't think he's planning anything, at least nothing successful, which his prison record shows too. We're going to get a second lead that's going to come out of the woodwork while we're dealing with Clarence, though, because we get a lot of people in Sharon's life that we're making contact with trying to get some information, like, tell us about Sharon, tell us about Darrin.
Okay.
And a couple of Sharon's friends are suggesting that we go talk to her ex-husband, Mr. Lemon.
Mr. Lemon.
So we could talk to Mr. Lemon.
Interesting.
Mr. Lemon and Sharon met in the Army. They were both stationed in Alaska. And there's some history here because at the time, remember Thomas shot his baby mama in the preschool parking lot?
Yes.
Thomas was also hanging out in Alaska with Sharon at that time. And Mr. Lemon and Thomas went to a strip club one night.
Oh, this isn't good.
Yeah, they were hanging out at the strip club for a while. They decide they get hungry. There's a Taco Bell across the street. They get to the Taco Bell. They're fresh out of money. They dropped all their ones back at the club, but they're really hungry. So they decide to rob somebody.
This was when Taco Bell was cheap.
Yes.
You could get like 12 tacos for $1.
And I think it goes to say something. They're going to do an armed robbery in the parking lot of Taco Bell to get enough money to buy Taco Bell.
Oh my gosh.
I know this is going to shock you. They get caught. However, when Thomas gets caught. When Thomas goes to prison, he never dimes out Mr. Lemon.
Because Mr. Lemon was in the military.
Because Mr. Lemon is married to his sister. So there's this history going back. And he feels very obligated to Sharon and her husband because of this. So it's kind
Sharon Lemon.
Sharon Lemon. That was her name for a while.
Wow.
But Mr. Lemon, he's a playa. And he admitted right off the bat, I was never faithful. I screwed around all the time. Well, here's what's interesting, Mr. Lemon. Word on the street is Sharon tried to kill you. And you know what he tells me? I don't know you well enough to tell you that story.
Who told you that she was
a bunch of friends and family are like, you've got to go talk to the ex-husband. She tried to kill him several years ago. You need to talk to him.
Okay.
But when I confront him with this, that's his response. I don't know you well enough to tell you that story.
Is he still afraid of her at this point, I guess?
He better be. So I keep pushing, and finally he's like, fine, I'll tell you. So look, I was cheating on her left and right. I just wasn't faithful that period of my life. So yeah, I was screwing around. I came home one night. And when I say I came home one night, I'd been gone for 2 or 3 days. And she knew what I was doing. And she told me, you better knock it off. If you don't, either leave or knock it off. If you don't knock it off, I'm coming for you. So she warns him. He saw it coming too.
Yeah.
He cleans his act up for a couple days, but then he's right back to his old ways. And he comes home from one of his nights at some other lady's house.
One of his roundabouts.
But this time when he comes home, Sharon's wearing a negligee as soon as he walks in the front door.
Oh, this is not a good sign.
It's the first red flag.
Yeah.
And Sharon tells him, oh, I'm so happy to see you. I've been wanting you. I've been desiring you. Go get in bed, honey. I'll be right there.
Oh,
and he does. Like an idiot, runs upstairs, rips off his clothes, jumps in bed.
Men, you do not leave for a handful of days without calling your spouse, and she's wanting you sexually when you come back home.
Wearing a negligee.
Oh my gosh, men beware.
So she jumps on top of him, and she tells him, hey, I want to try something new. And she already had this staged. There was ropes tied to the bedposts. Apparently he didn't notice in all of his excitement of getting in bed. So she ties each wrist to a bedpost and each ankle to a bedpost. Now, Mr. Lemon, he hates being tickled. Hates it.
Okay. What does this Mr. Lemon look like?
He's a big guy. Big boy.
Like football player big?
Yeah. He's a big guy.
Or like
no, he's
pudgy
built.
big?
He's built. He's a big guy.
Okay.
She gets off of him and she starts tickling him, knowing he hates it.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't give a shit about tickling him. She's testing the ropes. He can't get out. And he realizes he can't get out. And then she bends over and she whispers in his ear, I told you to quit screwing around on me. And then she walks out of the room. Can you imagine how terrified Mr. Lemons would have to be in that moment?
He was probably not sexually ready at that point anymore.
No, I think that's a safe assumption. If he was, he's not going to be in a minute or two when she walks back in and she has a syringe in her hand that's full of a brown liquid. She stabs it in his side, right underneath his armpit, and injects whatever that liquid is. And he's describing this to us as like acid. It's just burning so bad. He's screaming. He can't stand it. He thinks he's dying. He's about to pass out. She leaves. Just leaves him tied up with whatever this is now injected in him.
Is he screaming in pain?
Top of his lungs. There's kids, his kids, coming into the room, and then Sharon would come in and like herd them
Shoo
back
out.
About 10 minutes later, she comes back. She's on the phone, and she has another syringe. And she's like, yeah, no, it didn't work. Yeah, oh, okay. Hangs up the phone, goes back over, stabs him again on the side, shoots another thing in there.
So who was she talking to on the phone?
Somebody.
Somebody who knew about whatever this medication was.
Yeah. He passes out at
whatever
this
is
point.
in the syringe. Do we know what was in the syringe?
No idea, but he passes out. He wakes up to Thomas Moten, the guy who killed baby mama in the preschool parking lot, is the most sane person in the room now. That's going to tell you something.
This is the guy he did the robbery at Taco Bell with.
Yes. He wakes up to Thomas untying him and yelling at Sharon, basically, kill him or don't, but you're not going to do this to him. Because even he has a heart on this matter. Loads him in the car, drives him down the street, and drops him off at a bus stop. And he tells him, if you ever tell anybody my sister did this, I'll kill you. Good luck. And just leaves him.
Oh my gosh.
Passes back out. Police show up after somebody calls later on. They transport him to the hospital. So he's telling us this whole story, and I'm thinking, this is crazy. This is the person we're dealing with now. It's painting a really clear picture of Sharon, right?
Yeah.
But I ask him, hey, Mr. Lemon, that is a great story, but we're going to need some medical records. We're going to need to see, like, how do we prove this?
Yeah.
And he literally pushes the table back on me, stands up, yelling, bitch, please. And he pulls up his shirt. I could stick both of my fists underneath his rib cage in his side right there. He just has this nasty scar skin void. You could almost put a little baby in there. It's so big.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he's like, what more evidence do you need?
Right.
So that's the story of Mr. Lemon.
So there's some post-traumatic stress happening as he's explaining the story to you, probably.
Oh, I don't know, because Mr. Lemon is the ex who confirms during this interview he has been going back to Sharon's house since Christmas, having sex with her on a regular basis. This is the ex-husband that DJ was talking about.
Oh,
and I told him, Mr. Lemon, this is going to get you killed someday. And he's like, I know, I can't stop.
These men really liked Sharon, didn't they?
Okay, so where are we at this case? Let's go back to our timeline. And quite honestly, we're nowhere. Darrin is still missing. We know there's some suspicious stuff with Sharon. She's definitely capable of killing, but we don't know where's Darrin and how was Darrin killed if he was. Like, we still have a lot of work to do. We're going to deep dive the record some more. And if you look long enough, you'll start to see other patterns emerge.
Okay.
Second pattern coming out. When we talk about patterns, this one is one of the best ones I've ever seen. And it speaks so clear when you really see the big picture. But if you look at any one of these individually, you would never see it, which is why it took us a while to find it.
Okay.
This is why you have to look at all of the records. You hear me say that over and over again.
Yeah.
So this pattern is going to start on October 20th. Remember, Darrin goes missing on December 17th.
Okay.
Phone call on October 20th, incoming to Sharon's phone. 2 weeks later, almost to the day, November 3rd, another call coming in. Same number, same time of day. November 18th, almost 2 weeks later. Third call, same time of day.
Okay.
2 more the week after that. 5 calls the day that Sharon gets served the order of protection. She calls this number 5 times. 3 the day after that. 2 the day after that. And then every day after that, throughout the rest of December into January, it just keeps increasing more and more and more. Length of calls. If you think about it, being on the phone with somebody for 10 minutes, that's a long phone call.
Yeah, well, when cell phones came around, yeah. But
right.
Even when cell phones weren't around, it was a fairly long call.
Yeah, but I could look at your phone records, and right now I could look at the last year of your phone calls, and if I looked at calls only over 30 minutes, I would probably identify family member, spouse, maybe children.
Or a work call or something.
Yeah, but work calls are obvious. That's a whole different thing.
Even kids. I text more with my kids than we do talk.
100%. So for Sharon, 40 minutes is a really long call. She had one call for 41 minutes.
Which is a significant call.
And it was to AT&T. She's on the hold with AT&T. But 10 minutes is rare for her.
Okay.
Most of her calls to this person are between the 30 to 40 minute mark. So this person was very prolific in her life. When I looked at this and I put all this pattern together, it told me one thing. This is Sharon's new boyfriend. This is the guy that was probably involved in killing Darrin. This is the guy we need to look at.
Well, to notate there, we've always taught that typically the top caller when you're having a voice call with somebody, or the top person that somebody is contacting in phone records, is typically a significant other. If it's not a significant other, it's typically an affair or somebody that this person is having an intimate relationship with.
And given the fact that she's still married and Darrin's still home when this conversation starts, or these conversations start, it was pretty clear to me this is the other guy.
Okay.
So I start to run the number down and I found out very quickly it belongs to somebody by the name of Aubrey Muncie.
Okay.
Don't know anything about Aubrey. It's a brand new name to this whole thing. So we got to start looking up who's Aubrey. What is the background here? First thing that catches my eye, Aubrey was born in 1949. He is Sharon's elder by 22 years.
Wow.
So immediately I'm thinking, ooh, maybe not new boyfriend. This is an interesting connection.
Why would you say not new boyfriend?
The age gap. The age gap concerned me because at the time she was 34, he would have been 56. When you look at Sharon's other men that she's been around, Teddy Berry, Mr. Lemons, I can't say she was with Richard Thompson, but kind of a relationship with Richard Thompson, Darrin.
Yeah.
None of them.
They don't fit her boyfriend profile.
So when I'm seeing this guy who's 56, I'm thinking there's no way that this is going to be our guy.
Yeah, he doesn't fit. Oh.
And then I pull the picture, and that's the first thing I said. Oh.
Yeah.
For those of you listening that can't see YouTube right now, I put a picture of Aubrey Muncie up next to Sharon Hale. Aubrey Muncie looks like that hillbilly redneck in the motorhome down at the RV park. Probably has a Confederate flag out the back. You see the darkness in his beard kind of in the center. When I say darkness, not the blackish.
You like
I'm talking
yellow.
about the yellow-brown. That's the coffee stains. Oh. And Aubrey does live in a motorhome at the RV park in Tucson. So when I see this picture, I'm thinking, hang on, this is not Sharon's type. This is not Sharon's new boyfriend. Like, what is this relationship all about?
Okay.
Maybe he's got money. Maybe there's something Sharon's playing here with money.
Hidden under the trailer? Just
no,
in a hole under there somewhere?
He doesn't have money either. So now it's getting really interesting to me. Okay, who is this guy? Clearly it's not the new boyfriend. The timing of Darrin's disappearance and the increase in calls at the same time between these two, something's up. So I drive down to Tucson and I'm going to interview Aubrey in his motorhome.
Okay.
They're just friends. Aubrey's a vet and he's got some medical issues. Tucson does not have a VA hospital. So for his VA care, he has to drive to the VA hospital in Phoenix.
Okay.
Because he drives to another hospital, the VA reimburses him his gas money. Sharon is the petty cash cashier lady who does the reimbursement. So over the last year or so, when he comes down every 2 weeks for his doctor appointments,
he's having regular contact with her.
Having regular contact. They develop a friendship. And they started going to lunch once in a while.
Well, she is a social butterfly, you said.
And she's a classy chick. Yeah. So, yes, he says, absolutely, I call her. Whenever I'm going down for an appointment, I'll call her before, see if she's working that day and if she wants to have lunch. Because the VA, they've got a good cafeteria.
And she's really friendly.
Yeah, she's nice. Nice lady.
Okay.
Do you know anything about her husband, Darrin? No, I think she said that he left her. And I know that he was real mean and ornery, so I'm glad he did. She's probably better off that he's gone. Now, the one thing we do know is that he's lying. Because the calls around Darrin's disappearance dramatically increased. It's no longer just lunch. But we don't know why he's lying or what he's lying about. So we made a tactical decision at this point. We're going to stop this interview, play it off. It's like, okay, thank you, Mr. Muncie. Have a good day. Mm-hmm. Sounds reasonable. I don't want him really thinking much about what we're doing. Now we're going to get to our big break, finally. Darrin doesn't have a cell phone, but he's got a pager. And I'm sure some of our socialites are like, a pager? Yeah, it's 2005. He's got a pager. I've got a picture of it. It's a clamshell style pager. And what I mean by that is just kind of folds closed. This is a two-way texting pager. So when you think pager, don't think beep, 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 and then you have to find a phone to respond. It's got a full keyboard. and you can send messages, text messages, basically. So this was text messaging without phone calls is what it is. It's an Intel work pager though. So everybody at Intel has one of these, and these are how they manage work groups. So I would communicate with my manager through this pager, because the way Intel works on their shifts, I may not see my manager for 2 or 3 weeks.
It was an early version of Slack.
100%. It's an easy way to communicate back and forth with your work team. Now, as we start poking around a little bit, we find Intel actually has an account with this pager company where it's kind of a development beta style account. And they maintain all the records. So we have tower information, we have the messages, we have everything. So we pull all of that and we start to see some outgoing pages on the 17th, about the time Darrin goes missing, where he's telling his boss, I'm sick, feels like food poisoning, going to the ER. And that was in response to him being late to work and his boss asking, are you in tonight? Then we see a handful of messages that go back and forth, but then early in the morning, he texts his boss back, Glenn, just left the ER. I have stomach flu. They recommend 3 days of rest and antibiotics. Sorry, we'll give you a slip when I come in. Darrin. And what's really interesting when you break into these two messages a little deeper, his signature line.
Okay.
Darrin has always signed his messages Darrin. However, all of a sudden, when he first texted that night, he signed D. Darrin's never done that before. Also, most of Darrin's spelling is pretty good. That night, his spelling is terrible. It's all over the place. The next big lucky break we're going to get is on the next page of these. That same night, we get device registrations.
Let's talk about device registrations.
Yeah, let's do that. When I go off the network and I'm in a dead zone, but my phone, or in this case, the pager is still on, when I come back into that coverage area or a coverage area, my device has to re-register to the network because I've been off. It's got to register and say, hey, here I am. What towers am I using? I've paid my bill. I have access. All of those things have to happen. And it's a device registration. We're getting tower hits off device registrations. This was really interesting to me because there was a volley earlier in the evening where there was multiple in a row. We don't usually see that very often, but what that tells me is somebody's right on the border of being out of an area, in an area, out of an area, in, out, in.
So catching service.
Yeah, and then we see something similar the next morning doing the same thing. So at this point, we're kind of looking at, okay, we see the cell towers, we see these really questionable messages. And the thought is, can we get decent location off of this? So we contact Intel. They're going to give us 2 test pagers. This is really important later on. We start doing our early version of drive testing. We put one person in the police department, we put the other person driving around, and we're texting back and forth, and we're looking at what towers the pager's using. The more we crunch with that, we realize this pager went to California. So we test. We put somebody in a truck, we put them on I-10, sent them west to California. About 30, 45 miles outside of...
How long had you guys had to test before you figured out it was going to California?
About 2 days. We got it pretty quick.
Okay.
But we put somebody in the truck, told them to start driving towards California. We're going to maintain constant text messages back and forth. I want to see where you lose service. About 30, 45 miles outside of Phoenix, you go through this little tiny mountain pass. And you go through this little volley of hills, up and down, up and down, up and down.
And
you pass a canal,
service there.
And then you come down. When we sent that pager out, on top of the hill service, when they went through the whoop-de-woo, lost it. Top of the hill service, whoop-de-woo, lost it. We replicated to the minute those device registrations.
Wow.
It's somebody going to California. About 5.5 hours later, exact same activity coming back. So now we know, okay, this phone was 40 miles west of Phoenix on I-10 going towards California. 5.5 hours later, it comes back. Where it went, we don't know yet, but we now know at least it went to California. We start looking a little bit more through the records, trying to time some things. Something else pops up on Aubrey's phone records that's really interesting.
Okay.
Especially in today's world. Payphones.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Aubrey has 2 incoming calls from payphones. And it took us a while to track these down. Both of them the morning of the 18th. There's one at 3:34 in the morning, and that one's made from a payphone in downtown Phoenix. The next one's at 5:10. It's made from a payphone in North Tucson. And I just finished mapping the pager, and I'm thinking, wait, hang on, go back. We see the pager going towards California. 5.5 hours later, around, let's say, give or take 2:50, We see the pager coming back on I-10. Roughly 40 minutes later, there's a call on a payphone to Aubrey. Where we see the pager coming back to that payphone is about a 40-minute drive. After this first call on a payphone, it's about an hour and 40 minutes to get to Tucson. Hour and 40 minutes, we see another call to Aubrey. So whoever had the pager may be making the calls to Aubrey on the payphone.
From the payphone, right.
So now it's all starting to come together. Well, when we look at what Sharon's doing, there is a call to Aubrey Muncie the night before and later that afternoon on the 18th. So I'm going back and I'm looking at Aubrey Muncie. Well, what's he doing on this day? Well, he's home in his trailer, or his motorhome, in Tucson that morning. But around noon, he leaves. He goes down into Fort Huachuca area. It's like southeastern Arizona. And he's out in the middle of the desert there for 4 or 5 hours, and then he goes back to Tucson. I start digging into his records, and it's pretty obvious. His number one caller, the guy he calls the most, is a guy by the last name Franklin. Best friends. They were in the military together, really good friends. Just before he heads down to Fort Huachuca area, he calls Gary Franklin. When I look up where Gary Franklin lives, he lives just outside of Fort Huachuca. So pager leaves Phoenix, goes to California potentially, comes back, stops to call Aubrey once, stops in Tucson to call Aubrey a second time, maybe meets up with Aubrey. Aubrey calls Gary Franklin. Aubrey then goes to Gary Franklin's house. I don't know what that means yet, but that's the breadcrumb trail that we have figured out thanks to the pager.
You know it's significant somehow.
Yeah, and if people are wondering, wait, how do you have towers on Aubrey Muncie's phone, but you don't have towers on Sharon? Aubrey Muncie had Verizon. They keep cell tower records back in 2005, a full year, so we were able to get that. But at this point, it looks like Sharon may have went to Tucson after she went to California.
A lot of driving.
There's one more little piece of information, because now that Muncie is developing much more as a suspect, we're going to get into his financials. Find a credit card receipt for a Cadillac dealer, Chevy Cadillac dealer. Aubrey has a Ford. He's a Ford man. True and true.
Okay.
So we pull the receipt from the Cadillac dealer. It is the entire trunk of a Cadillac CTS.
Oh, no.
Weather stripping, carpet, spare tire cover, the whole kit and caboodle. If it was fabric or couldn't be replaced in the trunk, Aubrey brought it.
He must really enjoy his lunch times with Sharon.
Yeah, but why would Sharon need a new trunk?
Right, that's what I'm saying. He must really enjoy his lunch times with her.
So while we may not know what we don't know, we know Muncie's liar, pants on fire, right? There's a lot more going on with Muncie. So this time we are going to do a much more in-depth interview with Muncie. As far as I'm concerned, he's a witness, not a suspect. I'm going to do my best to make him a witness. And we plan this trip where we're waiting for him basically to come out of his house, and we're going to confront him in his front yard. Okay. Hey, Aubrey, come on. We know what's up. We know Sharon came that morning. We know she gave you some stuff, and I'm just assuming the trunk. And what I'm trying to get him to say is I'm going to just keep asking questions until he admits the stuff, the trunk, the weather stripping, the carpet, the spare tire cover. And he breaks very quickly. He's like, yeah, she did come down and see me. You're right. Who told you? I'm like, a lot of people are talking now. Why was she here? Her and her husband had a fight, and she just needed a place to stay. Okay, well, we know that while she was here, you took something from her, and I'm just curious what it was. I didn't really take anything. We know she gave you something. You know you took something. Like, let's just cut to the chase. He says, well, yeah, there was this assault. I'm like, assault? Yeah, her dad and her husband got in a fight. You know, her dad's on parole, and if he's caught fighting, he'll go back to prison. So they had to clean things up. But she told me, Darrin's fine. They just got in a fight, and there was a little ruckus in the house and some blood and stuff on some of these things. We just got to get rid of it because I don't want my dad going back to prison. But Darrin's fine. Okay, so there's this assault. So she gave you things from the assault? Yeah, she asked me if I could get rid of some things for her. Okay. Well, what did she give you, Aubrey, exactly? Well, there was this patch of carpet. A patch of carpet? Yeah, about a 10 by 5 foot cut piece of carpet.
That's a patch.
Okay, well, was it bloody? Oh, it was really bloody. Well, how much blood? I don't know. He's like maybe 4 feet in diameter of blood. Okay, well, what else? There was the bloody clothing. Well, whose clothes? Well, Darrin's, and then Sharon's clothes also had blood on them. Oh, and her dad's clothes. Okay, was her dad with her? Oh, yeah, I thought you knew that. No, we didn't know that, but thanks for telling us. Yeah, in fact, I ran to Walmart, and I got them both new clothes that morning, and I took their clothes because they had blood on it. Okay, wait. Let's go back to Darrin's clothes. What do you mean Darrin's clothes? His pants? Yeah, there was a pair of pants. Shirt? Oh yeah, there was a shirt there for sure. Underwear? Yeah, I think there was underwear. Socks? Yeah, pair of shoes. I'm like, hang on. So they beat him up, he's fine, but they stripped him naked? Well, I don't know. That's just what they told me. They said he was fine. Let's see. There was a bowling ball too. A bowling ball? Yeah, it was covered in blood.
Oh no.
Okay, what else? And now I'm just going to keep asking what else until he tells me about the carpet, the weather stripping, the trunk stuff.
How long did it take for him to get to that?
Oh, this is going to be an interesting little ride we're going to take. Well, let me think. There was a saw. Wait, the saw had blood on it? Yeah, it was bloody too. Okay, what else? Thinking he's going to tell me the trunk. They had an axe. It was bloody. Okay, what else? There was a shovel.
Oh, Aubrey.
God damn it, Aubrey. Did they give you the trunk lining too? Yes, they gave me the trunk lining too. Then he stops me and he said, look, I've been hunting my entire life. I know what it looks like when you butcher game, and I know what bone looks like. I'm pretty sure there was bone in that saw.
He said that.
And I'm like, Aubrey, you just told me they told you Darrin was fine. Well, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But now that you're making me think about all this, they might have killed him. And I'm thinking, no shit, Aubrey. Welcome to the case. All right, Aubrey, what did you do with these things? Well, I took them to the dump. Oh, you took them to the dump. What dump did you go to? There's that one down by Fort Huachuca. I took him down to that dump. I'm like, oh yeah. If I remember right, that one's got a plate reader, and that's how they track. When they go in, they weigh you, they see your plate reader. I'm just making shit up. I don't know about it. Mm-hmm. And then you pay, and he's like, yeah, I think so. I'm like, okay, so when we go down there and we pull the records for that day, your plate is going to show up. Damn it, I burned it. I burned it out in the desert down there. Okay, well, where did you burn it? Look, I got a good friend down there, and I ain't getting him involved. I ain't going to tell you where I burned it. And I said, okay, well, we'll go talk to Mr. Franklin when we leave here. God damn it, how'd you know that? So as soon as we tell him, well, you call him a lot, and it looks like you went to his house that day. We already knew that. That's why we're here. Yeah, I burned it down at Gary's house. But he had nothing to do. He didn't know. In fact, when he came out to see what I was doing, I told him, you don't want a part of this, Gary.
Oh, my gosh.
So very quickly, we've got a lot going on here. We immediately send somebody to Gary's house to secure that scene. We're going to write a search warrant for that scene. We're immediately going to get eyes on Clarence because now Clarence is involved, and we're also going to get eyes on Sharon. Now, while we're securing those things, I go back to interview Clarence. Call him, we show up. He explains, he knows. We told him, hey, we've talked to Aubrey. We know you went down there. We know you did this. We know you did that. Here's the items that were used. And he breaks. He completely breaks, which is interesting to see a hard criminal just lose it.
Right.
He actually tears up. He says, Sharon called me, and she told me that day that I'm a terrible daddy, and I've never done anything for her. And Daddy, damn it, I need you to help me. And when your daughter does that and you have been a terrible father, you'll do anything you need to.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you immediately almost feel bad for him. And I'm like, all right, Clarence, that makes sense. What did you do? Well, she came over to my house and she had a tape recorder. And she played this conversation that she secretly recorded of Darrin and her arguing. And he said he was going to kill her. I said, well, Clarence, how do you know for sure that was Darrin? I've thought about that a lot. I don't think it was. I think she played me.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, well, what'd she ask you? Well, it was interesting. She brought over an entire fifth of vodka and she poured me a full drink first. So they're sitting in the apartment. Clarence is just getting smashed. And Sharon tells him, Daddy, I need you to help me kill Darrin. Mm-hmm. We're going to drive over there. He's going to be sleeping. We're going to kill him in his sleep. We're going to get rid of the body. No big deal.
Okay.
Clarence agrees to do it. So they drive over. They go in through the garage into the laundry room. But Darrin's not asleep. He's awake in the living room. So when he hears the laundry room door from the garage open, he goes to the hallway to see who it is. And he sees Sharon and Clarence. And of course, Clarence is holding a knife.
And he doesn't know who Clarence is.
No. So he immediately is thinking, what's up here? And Clarence just attacks. And there's this big fight right there in the hallway laundry room. This is where the wall is, the hole in the wall that DJ saw later that night. Clarence stabs him multiple times, but Darrin's able to overpower Clarence for a little bit. But he's stabbed, he's bleeding out really bad at this point, just kind of collapses on the floor there. but he's very much alive. And probably the most disturbing thing is Clarence recounting how he remembers Darrin staring up, looking at him and Sharon. And he's, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? And Sharon's response is, just shut up and die. And that's the last thing that Darrin is going to hear before he dies.
Oh my gosh, poor Darrin.
This puts Clarence in a little bit of a PTSD moment where he's kind of freaking out. Sharon's got to smack him around a little bit to get him back.
Well, in all of his criminal history, he'd never murdered anybody.
Not like this, no. This is way beyond anything. So they roll him up in carpet. They cut out a piece of carpet, roll him up, put him in the trunk. Then they're going to drive him to the desert in California, where Sharon's plan is to cut him into as many pieces as they can and disperse him throughout the desert, not in one place, like pull over, cut off a piece, throw it in the desert, put him back, drive 5-10 miles, pull over, cut a piece, throw it back in the car.
Yeah.
They stop and get more alcohol on the way back. So by the time they get to this first scene that I described in the beginning, Sharon's the driver, Clarence is the passenger, Darrin's the body in the trunk.
Okay.
And to all of you socialites who thought that was poor Sharon in the trunk, that should be a really good lesson of the biases we have with the stigmas that are related to certain crimes, which is where we started from.
Especially domestic violence.
Especially domestic violence. And that's where all of this came from. He explained how she kicked him, pushed him off, and cut off Darrin's hand, called him a pussy. He started crying during that. And he said, that was no longer my daughter. I didn't know what I was seeing. That was a totally different person.
So he's crying, trying to saw off Darrin's hand.
He's crying, telling us the story about how traumatic this was to see his daughter kick him out of the way, cut Darrin's hand off with the axe, throw it in the desert like it's nothing, and then yell at him like, quit being a pussy, help me load him up into the trunk. We got more work to do. Come on, Daddy.
That's hardcore.
That's what he's saying. This was not my daughter. I didn't know this person. Yeah, it really freaked him out. And he's hardcore.
This is my son's sister. This is not my daughter.
Exactly. It makes sense. Like, he's right. So at that point, we're going to head out to Gary Franklin's. We got a lot of pictures. Those of you listening, you are going to want to tune into YouTube for this, Mark, because this gets pretty entertaining. This is Gary Franklin's plot. I'm not even going to say house. It's his plot.
It's a big area of land.
It's a big area of land in the middle of the desert in southeastern Arizona. He had several acres there. So this is the gate going through. You can kind of see a trailer and a bunch of junk in the back there. Mm-hmm. Here's another shot of it. Yeah, that's his house.
It's lots of vehicles without tires on blocks.
Yeah, and the thought here is, according to Aubrey, Gary has a burn pit. And he burned everything in this pit. So our thought is, hey, we go down there, we dig up this pit really quick, we see what kind of evidence we can recover in and out. What we didn't realize is Gary Franklin burned some stuff here, a little fire pit burn area. Mm-hmm. Some stuff over here, another little fire pit burn area. He'd burn some things here, and he'd burn some stuff in the actual fire pit itself. Milwaukee's Best, that tells you everything you need to know.
Just burns shit all over the property.
Pretty much, if there's trash on the property, he's like, I don't want to pick it up. He just burns it. So there's these burn piles over the entire property. And it's not like it's on the back 40. It's right next to the trailer. It's right next to this. It's right next to, it was a freaking mess. And all of a sudden we realize, oh shit, what have we gotten ourselves into? We end up taking 1,500 pounds of burnt material and ash off of this property. It took us all day.
Did you guys find everything that Muncie was talking about in separate burn pits, or did they all?
We don't know. A lot of these things are going to be burned. It's not like you're just going to see them there. So we had to take everything so we can forensically examine it. This is all going to happen later. We just took all the burn pits, 1,500 pounds worth.
You didn't mark which burn pit it came from at all?
I'm sure we did, but it didn't matter. Like burn pit A or burn pit B, it's still in the burn pit.
Yeah.
This one's interesting. Off to the side of the property behind the trailer, there's a shovel and like a little thing that you can use to dig for like fence post. The interesting thing on the shovel, you can't see it very good in this picture, there's a brand new UPC sticker on the side of that shovel. And remember, Muncie said that there was a shovel. Mm-hmm. So we decided to seize the shovel. Later on, Muncie will say he gave it to Gary Franklin because it looked like a perfectly good shovel. No reason to burn that. Mm-hmm. We were able to track this to the Kmart in Blythe, Arizona. They stopped in Blythe when they crossed the border. Sharon bought 2 of these that night.
Do you know if she paid with cash or credit card?
Yeah.
She paid with cash.
Cash, but there was a purchase of 2 of these shovels, that being the shovel from Kmart in Blythe.
Wow.
Kind of
So
cool.
did you get a hold of the manufacturer to figure out where it was purchased, or how did you guys figure out it came from Kmart?
The UPC, we're able to track back to Kmart, and then they can give us the transaction history. We gave them the day, and they're like, yeah, 2 were purchased in Blythe about the time she's passing through Blythe. So
Wow.
this is when I said we had to forensically examine all the burnt stuff. This is what it looks like. We have these little screens that we sift everything through very carefully and slowly, and then we're marking different items of interest as evidence. This took days. This was not a quick thing, literally 1,500 pounds of it. But we start finding some really interesting stuff. When we found the receipt for the Cadillac dealer, we went to the Cadillac dealership and we looked at everything that he had purchased, and some of it we seized as evidence. This, luckily, because we did that, we figured this out. This is the trim that goes around the spare tire cover in the Cadillac trunk. This is what holds the carpet to that little wood piece that goes over the spare tire. It usually has a piece of plastic on it, but obviously the plastic melted off.
It has little
spikes to hold the carpet. Yeah, and there was a part number on this, which is how we were able to figure out, oh, this is Cadillac stuff, so maybe we're in the right burn pit. Then we found a fossil watch.
Is that blood on the watch?
No, it's the plastic from the watch face that melted, and we had all these forensically analyzed, no DNA. However, Darrin had a fossil watch. Guess where he got it?
A Christmas gift?
When he bought Sharon the Cadillac CTS, the dealership gave him a fossil watch.
Oh.
Do you know what's really cool about that? Transaction record. We found the serial number on the fossil watch. It matched the one that came from the dealership.
Wow.
So that is Darrin's watch. We can show unequivocally that's the watch that was given to Darrin when he bought the Cadillac CTS.
I got her a car and all I got was this dumb watch.
He needs a t-shirt. Bought my wife a car and all I got was killed in this dumb watch. Wedding ring. This is a woman's wedding ring. What's interesting, on December 20th, Sharon Hale reports her wedding ring stolen from a Denny's in downtown Phoenix. This is her wedding ring. It was never stolen. She threw it to Muncie to burn in the pit because it had blood on it.
When you say she reported it stolen to the police department?
To her insurance. She recouped about $6,000 for this ring.
Oh my gosh.
Now we got her. We got us an insurance fraud case. There's the ring cleaned up a little bit more so we can see it. The reason we did that is we actually found some old family pictures and we did a deep dive there and we were able to show.
Were those her children there?
Yeah, that's all of her children. But we're able to show the ring. Her ex-husband was very quick to come forward too and say, I bought that ring. She never gave it back, and she
Wait a second. She was wearing the ring from her ex-husband while she was married to Darrin?
I'm glad you caught that. Yeah, Darrin's ring was little and she didn't like it, so she wore her ring from the previous marriage.
Wow.
Hacksaw blade. Muncie did say they had a hacksaw, so we recovered the hacksaw blade. This took us a while. If you burn a bowling ball, technically a bowling ball is just wrapped fiberglass. That's burnt fiberglass sheets from the bowling ball. And then that little dark thing you see just to the right of the 13, that's the big plastic core that they put in bowling balls to wrap the fiberglass around.
So I have a question. Did Clarence ever say what they did with the bowling ball? Why did they burn the bowling ball?
It was in the trunk. And I think everything in the trunk by the time they got done just had blood on it. So just to be safe, everything got taken to the burn pit.
Okay.
This is a 123 lithium battery, which was really interesting because we did all the field testing with the pagers. We killed the batteries on them a couple times and we had switched the battery. As soon as I saw that, it also goes in flashlights and back in 2005. But as soon as I saw that, I remember thinking, oh shit, the pager took this type of battery. So I'm thinking, okay, we're on the right track. Then we started getting a lot of pieces of this. This is the glass from the pager.
It just cracked when it was getting burned, or maybe they stepped on it or something?
Well, it's all plastic, so it's just going to break around there anyway. Yeah. This is the circuit board from the pager. And I've got a really cool picture here in a minute. As soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, oh, that looks... If you look carefully where the little circles are, it's the keyboard.
Yeah, you can see the little Z on
it's all the keyboard there.
QWERTY board.
We recovered all the glass. You could actually reassemble that pager or the glass for the pager there, which is kind of cool. We got a hold of Motorola, who was the ones who actually built this, the circuit board here. They flew out to us and examined the burnt pager. They brought a prototype with them for this pager. And this is a really unique pager. This was not publicly available at this time. And they did this comparison for us. And they said, without a doubt, that is the pager in the style of Darrin's pager. Now, I want to go back really quick. Because Intel was using these, they had an inventory of all the pagers that they had out, and they did a quick inventory to find out how many they were missing. They were missing 3, Darrin's being one of them. And then when we reminded them that they gave us 2, they were missing 1. The only pager like this that was issued by Intel with this exact circuit board, we were able to account for every one of them except for 1, which was Darrin's.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of a cool little thing there.
It's cool that they flew out to you guys to actually examine the entire circuit board.
They were on their dime. They did all this on their dime. They were actually really cool to work with. Motorola is excellent with law enforcement. They are one of the bigger supporters of law enforcement. They did a great job.
That's really cool.
Okay, don't comment on this picture yet. Just let it soak in for a minute.
Are those space buns?
Those are space buns.
On her hair.
Sharon's going to take a plea deal. And here's how this plays out is they were going to go death penalty on Clarence because of his prior history and now this murder, and it looks like it's very premeditated. Clarence has some issues because his criminal history kind of dictates it's time. It's time to put this guy away forever. So the death penalty is on the table. Sharon says, hey, you take the death penalty off the table, I'll plead to everything, and I'll take you to the body.
Now she feels bad for her dad.
Now she feels bad. She tried to take us to the body. It's in too many pieces. She can't find it. So we spent a day and a half, and I've got a really funny story. We'll end on that. Looking for Darrin. We didn't find him. But she actually went out in the desert, and we tried to find Darrin with her.
So she's walking around in the desert with you looking for
police
pieces.
Protection detail so that she doesn't escape looking for bits and pieces. It was terrible. It was an awful day. But she's going to get 22 years as a result of this plea deal. She is eligible for release in 2031. Wow. Clarence got 22 years. He will be eligible for release in 2030. Aubrey got a couple years of probation for destroying evidence and lying.
How is it that she only got 22 years?
Plea deal. The family wanted to recover Darrin as well, so they agreed to it, and that's where they came down to. Plea deals are weird. You never know where that's going to go.
Wow.
And technically, this was her first criminal event that was on record.
But it's a pretty significant criminal offense.
It's just a misunderstanding. Aubrey's going to get a couple years probation. This picture, though, and again, if you're not on YouTube, you're going to want to tune in for this one. This is her prison photo. And if you zoom in really carefully and you look around the eyes, she's wearing orange, but she actually has some orange eyeliner.
Yeah, or like eyeshadow.
Yeah.
We had one of our editors tell us, people will actually use Cheeto cheese to make different makeup colors.
Yeah, they'll make all kinds of it. So like she dressed up for, like you said, she got the space bun, she used the Cheeto cheese eyeshadow. She
put makeup on.
She had to match her orange jumpsuit or her orange jumpsuit here.
I guess you could use Dorito cheese too. Depends on what kind of chips.
Sure, but I told you she was a classy chick.
Yeah.
Don't say it.
Okay.
What I want to tie this episode all together, this is just a love story. It's just a misunderstood love story. There is a happy ending somewhere here. Not for Darrin. It's really sad for Darrin, and I feel bad for that piece. But I want to show you this next picture. That's Aubrey and Sharon. You see Aubrey's wearing blue. Looks like he cleaned up a little bit that day. His beard is kind of freshly trimmed. He's got his hair combed.
His shirt looks pressed.
Yeah. And then Sharon's wearing her orange sweatsuit for the prison. She's got her prison ID there. They look very happy. This is a love story because after Aubrey got off probation, they got married.
Oh my gosh.
It's like they are still married today.
It's like a romantic comedy.
It's rom-com. This is Aubrey and Sharon in the day they got married at the prison. So they got married there in the prison yard, and this is their wedding picture. So back to my first thing where you asked me, does she not have pictures of Darrin? When she got married to Aubrey in prison, she has pictures. Of course she had pictures back then. But
so here's what's interesting. Your initial thought when you were looking at her phone records of those incoming calls, you were spot on.
The records were spot on. I doubted it.
Yes, you got that tunnel vision we talked about
tunnel vision
in the last episode.
And I want people to take something away with that. When I say over and over, just very passionately, look at the records and let the records tell you the story. Don't insert your biases in there. That's where we screw things up. You
were thinking, how could she ever be with a dude like Muncie?
In his motorhome, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, not only was she with him, she's married to him to today.
Wow.
So I do want to tell one little funny story to close this out. When we got the court order that we had to take her into California to look for the body as part of this plea deal, I called the sheriff's office there, and I explained to the sheriff's office, hey, here's our situation. We've got to bring a prisoner. She's an active prisoner. We're going to be searching your area. Just a courtesy call to let you know if we find anything, we'll be in contact. And it's the homicide sergeant there. He says, please don't come. What you don't understand is you guys are getting ready to search probably the largest dumping ground in the United States. It's one of the main smuggling trails, corridors for human trafficking. And he's like, people are killed and dumped out there. We get calls every day of bones. Don't come, because you're going to find bones. They're not going to be your bones, and they're just going to cause you a bunch of work. We find an arm.
Okay.
The arm is missing the hand, and there's hesitation marks on the bone. And what hesitation marks are, I'm doing something to cut your hand off, but I stop. And then I do it again, and I stop, and I do it again. So I can see these cuts.
Because you're being forced to do it by your daughter.
And when I saw that, I'm thinking, boom, we at least got an arm.
Yeah.
If nothing else, we have the arm.
Okay.
Package it up. We take it. We're thinking this is awesome. We give it to our medical examiner. They do all the examination, DNA it. It's not Darrin.
Not your arm.
I had to call that sergeant back, and I'm like, so that whole finding bones and not ours? Yeah, you're right. We found bones. We thought it were ours. They're not ours. Where do you want me to send this bone?
So hang on. Now they have a bunch of work to do because...
Yeah, and just exactly what he told me played out perfectly.
Oh my.
About 8 years later, a skull was found by some dirt bikers in a wash, and they called it in. They were able to DNA test it. We did have Darrin's DNA in the system. It ends up being Darrin's skull. So his skull was later recovered. And then they also found part of his scapula and backbone. A farmer plowed it up. So they also found that piece.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
The takeaway, it's not just a love story. Obviously, I was just playing on that. But, you know, I think we can clearly say he saw it coming. He was taking actions to see it coming, but probably not enough.
Right.
This is that whole thing that when you're in a bad situation and you see some of these things coming, don't underestimate what could potentially happen.
Whether you're a man or a woman in a
Get yourself
relationship.
out of that situation ASAP. Like, you got to go.
I do think that a lot of men don't really pay attention to how much danger they could possibly be in a domestic relationship.
Oh, I do. Personally, I'm not saying men in general. I'm just saying.
Oh, stop. There are so many signs that not only should he be seeing the person who's in the relationship, but that family members see, that friends see, that if you see those things, someone is being berated constantly by their spouse or significant other, or they're being told that they can't see family members, they're being kind of isolated from friends and family. Those are significant signs that somebody's probably in a really unhealthy relationship. Right. Say something, encourage them to realize that that is not a healthy place to be.
Well, and the delay in reporting, that's the other thing, is you got to push harder on the law enforcement agency. They totally dropped the ball. There's no doubt there was a huge oversight by law enforcement in this case. And when I reviewed it, by the time it got to me, it's too late. There's not much I can do to fix that. And there was a lot of changes that this case made to the agency as a result. But man, you talk about dropping the ball early in the investigation and critical evidence being missing. If we would have had, Sharon had her phone with her that entire time.
Well, if people had just actually taken reports, informational reports at the very beginning.
But back to your point, it's the man who's missing.
Yeah. Well, and some of this could very well fall on the order of protection, the judge who issued the order of protection.
I'd be willing to bet if that would have been Sharon's son in the lobby reporting his mom missing with dad at home, I bet you it would have been taken more serious.
Yeah. So when we look back to cases such as Let's Talk About It and Hammerside, those were cases where there was DV with the man involved. They saw it coming. Their family members and friends saw it coming, but nobody said anything. And they're just good reminders that if you can share those cases or this one with a family member or a friend who you know they're going through something and this might help them, do it. Let them listen. Let them relate a little bit to what some of these people went through. And give them a chance to live, give them a chance to get out of the situation that they're in.
You know, it's interesting you're saying that too, because there's a couple episodes I can think of in Let's Talk About It. One of the victim's friends at the fire department knew she killed him immediately. And in his interview with, I think it was Dateline, he actually teared up and felt some responsibility because he said, I saw it coming. I should have been a better friend. I should have been there. And then in last week's episode of Swamp Predators, in the 2020 piece, they're interviewing one of the friends, and this was the friend that told her, you need to go see him face to face. Look in his eyes when you have this conversation. She completely breaks down in that interview because she feels responsible. She saw it coming. And not only did she not do anything, she actually encouraged her to meet face to face. And she feels terrible about that. So yeah, you have to have a lot of forethought in these situations to be able to see that. And, you know, hindsight's 2020. We're not blaming anybody. I'm just sharing other people's stories with the intent that maybe somebody else recognizes this.
But it goes back to the beginning of what we were talking about. We wanted to give you a story that was very memorable so that you can share it, so that people who are going through this, whether they're a man or a woman, regardless if they're married or not, they're in some type of violent partnership, they can start to recognize that they are not isolated in these types of behaviors.
Yeah, it's more common than people think.
Yes, and also, not only is it more common, people who die from these types of behaviors is very common. So if you haven't seen some of the episodes that we're talking about, Let's Talk About It, Hammerside, Swamp Predators, we will link them at the end of this episode so that you can go and view them and share them as well.
All right, that was a long one. We know it was long. You guys have been asking us for longer content. Yeah. Next week, we're going to do a really cool case on Nilos. We talked about Nilos last week on Swamp Predators. Got a great case. We're going to get a little bit deeper in there to show accuracies.
Join us next week for A Penny for Your Thoughts. So Sam Penny is somewhat of a mentor to these entrepreneurs.
That's a business mentor. It's also safe to say he's probably a gang member.
Okay.
Probably Aryan Brotherhood. And you are correct. There is this little tattoo in his hairline there, and it says outlaw.
Oh, that's what that says. Okay.
Yeah, but it's in cursive, so it's still classy.